What are you up to this weekend? Oh, me? Not much. Just hanging around enjoying Arsenal being top of the league and into the Champions League quarterfinals. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, nothing to do but enjoy being awesome. Got to admit, it feels every bit as good as I hoped it would. We are top of the league, and we are also into the Champions League quarterfinals. We will be facing Bayern Munich, which is a breeze, so I'm looking forward to paying them back. And then, I've been hearing a discussion that people want the hardest route possible, win it beating Bayern, then Madrid or City, then like Barca, really play the big boys and have it be a historic Champions League trophy win. And I agree. I think our path is to beat Bayern, then City beat Madrid. City are convicted of their financial crimes and forfeit the semifinal. Then we face Barca in the semifinal, who go into administration and forfeit the final, and we win the Champions League in historic fashion. So that would be my blueprint, but your mileage may vary. Couple of things. We did a big episode on the Champions League draw and our path to green there with Clive on the Patreon on Friday. So that is available. You can go check it out. The last 25 minutes of that are on the Ben White Southgate situation. Both Clive and I were really upset about it. And candidly, it's an emotional, but I'd like to think still articulate and intellectual discussion of what I regard as a pretty dismal situation there on behalf of the England manager. Now, I realize as a non-England supporting person, I kind of need to stay on my lane here. But if you want to hear probably less my take, but Clive's take, it's there. And I think it's really good. And I would recommend it to anyone. So something to check out. Phil Costa has a new pod coming out. Comes out this week, first episode. It's going to be great. It's going to be an overall footballing discussion of major themes and topics around the game. Obviously, when he's really going to shine is this summer when he's doing Euro Daily and Copa America and covering all of that. So we'll put a couple out on this feed, but I think it'd be great. Once that's out, if you can get over there and like and subscribe to it and just support Phil Costa because we love him and we think he's going to do a great job. Now, Clive unavailable today. You can check him out on the Patreon pod on Friday. Couldn't make the scheduling work. He'll be back this week on multiple pods. We'll be doing scouting all week for Arsenal targets. Here with me now, though, people who are more than capable of podcasting. Well, let's put it this way: people who can podcast in an effective manner. Let's just set the expectation appropriately. One of them is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Pause My Pants. I'll pause.
Who?
Happy St. Patrick's Day, my friend, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody celebrating. If you are listening on the 17th, which is when we're recording this.
Thank you very much. And to you too, Elliot. I'm sure you have some Irish heritage lineage. I believe Stilberto Stillmanator. Stilberto Manator still also has Irish parentage, heritage.
As you know, most of us in this country anyway are all mutts. So I'm sure I have some of it in there somewhere. And in here somewhere is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stillmanator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
I
really had to resist saying that in an Irish accent.
There you go. Thank you for keeping us on the air, so to speak.
Thank you.
And Paul failing his hosting audition with the Stilberto reference. So
yes,
he had one shot,
and
you blew it.
Stilbert O'Leary. I don't. There's potential there.
There you go. There's some potential there. We can make it Irish. Okay, so. I don't know if you noticed, but there was an Athletic article out this week talking about Spurs' path back into the title race. As we sit here today, decidedly not back in the title race. So Kai Convert on the Discord asked, who gets battered everywhere they go? Everywhere they go, I will take this one. Tottenham get battered everywhere they go. We have a lot of good questions today. We're going to do a mailbag, and I think it makes sense, right? There's no football, so we'll let you guide the conversation. And I do think that there's one here. It's so basic. It's so simple. But I do think it's a good one to consider in this moment when we sit here poised to potentially have one of the most historic seasons of all time, but also poised to not do that, so to speak. Tim, just as 275292 on Discord asks, and I really hope that's not their social security number, can this season be considered successful without a trophy? It is a very straightforward question, but we actually got a lot of that, on both on the Discord and on Twitter in terms of just what constitutes successful season? Anon at Anon MNAF on Twitter also asked, if we go out in the semis of the UCL and get second in the EPL, is that failure? So what is the bar? How do you quantify this if it can be quantified?
Yeah, to quote Principal Seymour Skinner, the short answer is no with an if. The long answer is yes. No, was it yes with an if? Yeah, yes with an if and no with a but. Or to quote a famous song, it's not what you do. It ain't what you do. It's the way that you do it. Because that's like, yeah, you could say semi-final and finishing second kind of sounds good on the face of it, but how do you go out the semi-final? Do you lose 10-0 over 2 legs? And then do you blow the league on the last day because all you have to do is draw at home and you lose? Like, of course, that's not a successful season.
I just say losing 10-0 would be the most painful irony in the history of podcasting. go
yes,
for it.
Yeah, indeed. But over 2 legs.
Yeah, okay.
Come on, 9-0.
But yeah, so it all depends on the how, really. Like, if we compete to this level in the Premier League and Manchester City or Liverpool just go and win all their games, yeah, that's and again, I suppose it depends what you mean by success. It's not tangible, quote unquote success, obviously, but if that happens and we lose the league, maybe because we drew at the Etihad and won all our other games, and they win all their games, it's kind of like splitting the difference out of that. I do think it's an interesting discussion, though, as well, just because of what Ange Postecoglou said yesterday about, I think his quotes, as ever, in the kind of QT dunking world of Twitter were kind of considered in a very binary fashion. But he was kind of talking about, I think, like process versus outcome, right? And his view seems to be, I think, like focus on the process and you'll kind of get the outcome by doing that, which actually I think is right. And I think that's how the Spurs manager should be thinking after having a couple of heavily outcome driven managers for whom only the outcome mattered and it landed them absolutely nowhere. So like, I kind of get what he means, but clearly I think we're a bit further along now and we're in that kind of, right, we're good now. We need to nail something down, which is why I'm not dismissive of the cups anymore, because I don't want this to be a Pochettino style era. But we finished second and it's a good second, and we go close in the Champions League semi-final and don't quite get there. With the age of the squad, I think, yeah, next year we can build on this and go one better. But if it's all a result of a massive capitulation, then no, basically.
Yeah, I think the other thing is it's how much joy do you extract from a season while it's going on? Or are you someone who only extracts joy from a season based on what happens when it's over? Because I have extracted a lot of joy from this season. Obviously, a lot of it post January 1, but even pre-January 1, I mean, we beat City, right? That was quite enjoyable. Like there have been moments I've really enjoyed. We were back in the Champions League. Bukayo Saka scoring our first Champions League goal in 7 years. Like there have been a lot of moments that I'm going to remember from this season, just as I did last season.
Yeah, and people love last season, right? And that ended terribly, but people still refer to it very lovingly and very affectionately. And it's very funny when we always get those questions about, last season's team. We know what people mean by that. They mean the August to December kind of team. That's what they're talking about. They're not talking about the team in the second half of the season, because people have a lot of affection for that season. It was successful, if in an intangible way.
I think what people probably won't allow for, but might need to, is if you have a glance at the fixture list between now and the end of the season, it is brutal. It is grueling. It is going to take its toll. Now, my hope is it will take its toll on Liverpool and City as well. But I do think there's been a major difference between Arsenal on full rest and Arsenal on 3 days rest this season. All you have to do is look at the Brentford games and the Porto games and compare those with what we did in other games. Look at the West Ham game and the Fulham game at the end of the holiday program, and you can see the difference in Arsenal with full rest and without it. And we're not going to have anything approaching full rest during the run-in, so we're going to have to use the squad and hope we can stay fresh, because I do think if we were to lose at the Etihad and not be competitive, to your point, Tim, in the quarterfinal, and lose at Spurs and lose at Old Trafford, and that's how the season derails, I don't think people are going to be as generous in their evaluation of it, unfortunately. And then you get the nonsense media stuff about the B word and all that's, all that nonsense comes back. So some of it is how you get there, for sure. I mean, it's crazy to think that when the football kicks back off on the 31st, we're 6 weeks away from absolute elation or absolute misery. It's all going to happen very quickly from there. So we'll have to see. Paul, normally in a mailbag, we'll bounce back and forth with different questions for everyone, but I think this is sort of the overarching question of the moment as we have time to sort of take stock. So I'll ask it to you as well. What's your impression of, can I ask you this maybe, can you be a little more concrete in terms of your criteria? Like from here, what would we need to do where you would be willing to say season a success, right? So not, it ended bad, but I still enjoyed it and I can extract joy from it. What would be the actual criteria from here? Check marks of things you'd need to see us achieve where you could say at the end of May, unqualified success, apart from the obvious, right? Win one of the two trophies we're in for or both.
Yeah. As you said, Paul, could you be more concrete? I'm like, he's asking me if I could be the one who is more concrete in my answer. And yet something miraculous happened. I think I can.
It's like asking Tierney to invert into midfield. It's just,
Well, to be fair, though, Paul's going to be great on the Real Sociedad Vision podcast. So
yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I actually have some background on them because of Martin Odegaard and tracking his every... But anyway,
you've talked yourself into a new gig.
yeah, sure. I've got a new pod coming out on Thursday. We hope you'll support me over there.
Maybe.
Yeah. Here's my definite. I was actually thinking about it. We probably all were, right? In footballing terms, like football, the world of football, you can only be successful if you win something, or you're a failure. Those are your two options. You miss, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. In concrete terms, how would I measure it? If we finish strong, it's a successful season. That's the key thing for this team. The last two seasons, for all the reasons we could list, understandably, we fell off. We can't fall off in this. We have to finish strong. If we miss out in the league, but we finish strong, that's huge progress. Footballing wise, level of the team wise, level of the way we carry ourselves in the league next year. If we finish strong in the Champions League but lose out, if it goes to penalties or if we did our damnedest in whether it's in this round or in the next round, if we can hold our head high in terms of how we finished, we don't tail off. I don't think we will either. I was having a bit of a crisis a day or two ago, and I've got lots of thoughts around it. But progress will be taking where we're at the moment with this squad and finishing strong. Is that success? Well, in football terms, no, because in the football world terms, no. And it's unfair. You have to win something to be successful, air quotes there. But that's how football works. It's a crazy thing. It's irrational. We lose our minds when we win a trophy, despite the fact that it's the FA Cup and we sucked doing other things. But that season, there's success in that. Like success doesn't make sense in the football world. But fans, craziness, that's the way it should be. It's an irrational thing. But in real terms, progress is us finishing stronger this year because we're in a good place right now. And if we keep that and keep building, if we miss out, we miss out.
I think that's entirely good for me. Look, no two people are going to feel exactly the same way. I don't think the only way this season is a success is to win the Champions League or the Premier League. Like, I don't think that's the only way. I am sure the media, some people in the media will want to characterize it that way for clicks, but I don't think too many people really feel that way. What's going to be funny is if we don't win it, it won't be funny, but what will be funny is people trying to characterize us as bottlers when all season long they weren't describing us as contenders. So there's going to be some cognitive dissonance that creeps in there. All right, a few from the Discord here, Tim, that all align to the same essential question. I'll give you the simplest version. Pitch Black Jack says, Q, how the bleeding hell are we supposed to get through April? Fair. Torstenson 82 says, with between 12 to 15 games to play in about 2 months' time, how many trusted players or solid starting quality players, if you will we need, and do we have them available? That's the question that keeps me up at night at the moment. How much will we need to rotate, and do we have the depth to do it? And finally, Seattle Gooner says, with our schedule being as packed and as tough as it is, and with Arteta never having shown, that his words, not mine, so please send angry replies there, ability to rotate, with City being City and Liverpool having an easier schedule, make the case for why Arsenal will handle the April and May schedule successfully. So a lot of different ways to say that, but essentially all the same question. How do we navigate what is, I have to think, the most packed 6 weeks of fixtures we've had in at least a decade?
Yeah, it's a very key KPI coming up for Arteta now, because there's no two ways about it. When you get to this stage of the season, you've got to rotate. I don't think you have to do it in the first half of the season when players are tuning up. I think people panic too much about rotation in October and November, and that's when they're cycling up. So actually, you kind of don't want to rotate players, but at the end, that's kind of when you have to. That's when players are most fragile, and whether we like it or not, we're going to have to take some key pieces out in some important games. And it might only be for 60 minutes, but you have to do that. And we've done it before in, I think, 2006 Champions League. We got to the final that year. We were chasing fourth. We didn't start Henry in a North London derby. We went with Adebayor and Van Persie because there was an acknowledgement that he can't play all of these games. And someone like Saka is probably going to have to be on the bench for a league game. And that's where guys like, particularly I think guys that Arteta bought. So like we found one in Kivior, right? And there are players that a lot of people are keen to write off now, like Jesus and Zinchenko and all of that. And I'm more comfortable with that because I don't think Arteta will have a big problem with like, oh no, I've got to play Zinchenko at left back like I've been doing for the last 18 months, pretty much nearly every time he's fit. And you know, Tomiyasu's going to have to start ahead of Ben White in a big game somewhere. Again, big whoop. It's more the kind of Fabio Vieira. Like, you bought that guy. He's been in nearly 2 years now, and I understand he's just come back from injury and all of that, but you're going to have to start him in an important league game at some point. So, you know, maybe against Luton or someone like that. Maybe we've been used to like playing someone like Luton at home and going pretty much full strength, which I've been fairly relaxed about, but and also you've got to be clever with the way you do the rotation. I don't think you can say, it's Luton, we can make 8 changes. Like, it doesn't work like that. It has to be like fairly, you know, gentle cycle rotation, 2 or 3 changes per game. But and what's going to be important on top of that as well is, you know, maybe the Hale End boys, who I don't think Arteta has an awful lot of faith in, like Smith Rowe and Nketiah and Nelson. They're going to have to play some part. Whether it's, you know, Smith Rowe's probably going to have to start an important game as well somewhere. But like in Nketiah and Nelson, I think it's more likely that it's like they're going to have to come off the bench. So yeah, that for me is the most intriguing part left of the season, because I think you're right. I think obviously most teams look better when they play once a week, but I think that's been a real issue for us, and that's usually a depth issue. But I think now, with finding some players like Kivior, etc., Jesus, Zinchenko can't really get back in the team at the moment. You know, it's more the Vieira, Smith Rowe, Nketiah level. That's what I'm looking at. Can he trust those guys? And if he does trust those guys, obviously they have a big responsibility to come up to the level as well. Because if they don't, they're definitely gone in the summer.
Yeah. Paul, I want to get your take on this too. And I'm going to ask a question that came from the Discord, because I think that this will guide it, and then we can have a bit more of a free swim. But I want to go through this one at a time with you. How many games do the following players start before the end of the season? This is from Speckled Jim on Twitter. You ready? Okay. Thomas Partey.
Entirely a function of fitness.
Let's just say they're available to select.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 5.
5 for Thomas Partey?
Yep.
I'm going to go with 0. Smith Rowe?
2.
I'll go with 0. Fabio Vieira?
None.
I'll go with 1. Reece Nelson?
2. I'll probably go 1 Smith Rowe, 2 Nelson.
Okay. I'll go 0 for Nelson. Eddie?
2.
Yeah, I was going to go 1 or 2 for Eddie. I'll say maybe 1. With Party, I want to go back. I'll say 2. I think you could start 2. I mean, the problem we have, first of all, the only banker really where you're like, that's a game to rotate is Luton at home. Well, and Everton at home on the last day, but by then we'll know if there's anything to play for. Paul, you want to jump back in there?
Why don't you think Partey, if fit, which is our assumption here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you think he'd play more than 2?
I think Jorginho is just ahead of him right now in terms of trust. We've been on an excellent run, and Jorginho has been critical to that. So I think if both are fit in most games, it will because the problem is, Paul, I don't think there's enough time left for Mikel to get comfortable with Partey in the starting lineup. He's a different type of player. We're clearly comfortable with Jorginho in the starting lineup. So I think we've got a couple versions, right? We've got Jorginho, Rice, and Odegaard as a midfield, right? We've seen that. We have Rice, Havertz, and Odegaard as a midfield. Those are the 2 that I think we will use the most. And I think Partey will be the 3rd permutation of that. But I don't know what that permutation will be. Would it just be Partey, Rice, and Odegaard? It might be. And maybe Partey will look good enough in training that he'll feel confident doing that. But I have to tell you, the fact that Partey didn't come on in 120 minutes against Porto, I don't know that Mikel's sure, and he's looked really rusty, and that's understandable. But some bad giveaways in his very, very limited minutes we've seen him. I think we have 2 midfield 3s that we are currently using, and I really think those ones are used. Not to say Partey won't play minutes. I just don't know that he will start because Mikel, let's be honest, he isn't huge on rotation, especially in critical pieces of the puzzle. So you want to come back on that?
I would interpret not playing Partey as he understands the importance of the run-in, and the one thing he is not going to do this time around is rush Partey. It's going to be like, does he need 7 minutes this game? Does he need 8 minutes? Whatever that gradual path to get him to where he wants to be. Partey, nobody can deny, is a worldie when he's a worldie. I know that's a bit of a
on
truism.
form, he's one of the top central midfielders in the world.
And there's going to be so many games, 2 week. Jorginho can't do it. There'll be injuries in other places where you want you need Rice at the left 8 because you got Havertz doing that. We're going to be so thin that if you're a world class player, which Partey can be if he stays fit, he's going to play games. So that's my.
So it's hard, right? I could be way, way, way off on this because he has the quality to make me look wrong. I just don't know how much rotation we will actually do. Tim, this is the interesting thing. Paul? Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to get to the trusted players piece.
Sorry, please.
We can come back to that.
No, please do it.
So I had this KPI from last season when I looked at City, and they managed to do something we're talking about here. They've done it season in, season out. We came up with the number 18. I think everybody was about comfortable. They had a squad of 18 players that Pep trusted. And I'm like, where are we at? Have we got 18 we trust? I think we're at 16. And I include players like, apart from all the players we'd all agree with, I've got Trossard in there, obviously. I've put in Partey. Okay, you might quibble with that, but
I don't quibble with it, by the way, in terms of talent. I'm just saying, just in terms of how I see things shaping out right now. Yeah.
Look, if he's running thin, I think he'll use a world-class and fit Partey. He'll get over whatever heartache he has. So I'm going to include Partey. Obviously got Jorginho. I'm going to assume Timber comes back and plays some role, and if he's there's a lot of ifs here. He's in my. I've got Kivior. I got Zinchenko. That gets me to 16. If I got Tommy in there, he's got to stay fit. That's in my 16. So I'm too short, and on my bench of people not yet proven to be trusted going forward is Eddie, Reece, Smith Rowe, and Vieira. So we're probably still 2, and 2 makes a big difference. One of those guys needs to step up and become trusted, That gets you to about 17, which is fine for the running. If we have those, Pep didn't have all 18 of his trusted players available for the run-in. If we can keep almost all of those guys available for the run-in, we have a bunch of titanium players, which I think is huge. The guys who are not niggle merchants: Martinelli, Saka, Havertz, Rice, Odegaard, White, Saliba, Gabby, and we've got 4 guys who can play left back. You basically have the whole 11 covered with titanium players who should be available week in, week out, game in, game out. I'm starting to talk myself into we got the legs for the run-in.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting questions we got on Discord that I think is a fair point is Loey133 says true or false.
Loey.
Hey, Loey. Arsenal don't need to rotate starting 11s for the run-in as we are well rested and it's only 10 weeks. I mean, there is an argument of it's like, hey, the best players play every 3 days. Yeah. Mikel has been saying that. Like, I think when Mikel says something other than about injuries, he usually means it. And he's been trying to get, we were so mad. Why doesn't he rotate Saka? Why doesn't he rest Saka? Well, maybe it was all part of the grand plan, which is for Saka to feel the cadence of playing every 3 days at the tail end of a season. And so it is possible. Hey, it's 10 weeks. We might have 9 games in April. Blink and you'll miss it. Or not in April, but within a month, if you count the 31st as April. And so he may feel these players need to do it. I mean, to be fair, if you look at
to play through fatigue. Like we think, fatigue, you must stop. No, fatigue, you need to learn how to play through it, to find your form, to play at a basic top level, even though fatigued.
Yeah, and like if you look at City, for example, Haaland plays every single game. You look at Liverpool, Mohamed Salah, when fit, plays every single game. Right? I mean, he started against Slavia Prague, or was it Sparta Prague? Sparta Prague, I think, in the Europa, doesn't matter. In the Europa League, up 5-1 from the first leg. I mean, these players need the cadence of playing every 3 days because they're now going to have to do it. So, Tim, are we as fans more predisposed to thinking that rotation is going to be a big part of the story here? And because, like, for example, I think Saliba and Gabriel are going to have to play every single game start every single game the rest of the season. Maybe Luton at home, but otherwise, I don't see a game where I say, let Kibior start at center back or let Tomiyasu start at center back. So barring enforced change, are we overstating the amount of rotation that A, will do, and B, we even need to do? Is that more of a fan thing than a manager thing?
I think in general it is. I do think it's different at the end of a season, though. I think, like I said earlier, like the beginning of the season's about cycling up. But like at the end of last season, like City in the end, like they were playing De Bruyne with a torn hamstring last season. And to be fair, like there was no international tournament. So he was probably more predisposed to doing that because he wasn't going to miss anything for Belgium or anything. And it was probably like, look, like that famous Bertie Mee speech in the last weeks of the double season in 71, he gave this big speech to the players where he said, look, I'd never usually say this, but for the next couple of weeks, your families come second. Like, this is above everything because you can, just for this month, you can make history here. And I wonder how much more difficult that is to do when there's actually a Euros, and some of those players might be like, actually, I want to go and play at the Euros as well. So, but still, the point remains that they played De Bruyne on a torn hamstring until it completely blew up and has kind of wrecked a lot of this season for him. As well, but I don't know. I do think at least one game there's maybe going to have to be some kind of compromise. What we have done for ourselves is by winning some of these games that we've just come through in February and January, like 5-6-0, and getting people off with half an hour to go. That's very handy. It's very, very handy. And probably not being in the FA Cup, so they've had these days off and have this time off as well. That's handy as well. It would be quite nice if we could work some of that. Oh, Declan Rice has got a little bit of a niggle in the hamstring and he can't join up for international duty, which City seem to be able to do. They seem to be able to find an injury for Haaland and even De Bruyne. And he sat down for an FA Cup quarter-final tie. I don't think City are that bothered about that. Particularly against, Newcastle, who aren't very good at the moment. So, maybe. I just think there's probably going to have to be a game somewhere. And it's not going to be en masse. It's not going to be all of them. But, and look, the likelihood that everyone's going to be completely fit until the end of the season, the chances are that's not going to happen. The chances are we're going to have to eat an injury somewhere, and we are in that kind of, we're coming towards that phase where a hamstring ends your season as well. So all of that is likely to happen. We're going to have to deal with it one way or another.
But I'll say something else too, right? Like, it's also possible it doesn't happen. Like, it's possible we stay fit. Like, the teams that go on and do it, they stay fit. They are able to navigate the complexity of the end of the season and dodge the key injury that wrecks their season. You know, they tend to stay fit. And so maybe that happens for us this season. Like, I don't think it's out of the question. And this is the interesting thing though, Paul. Tapley D says, would you trade a quarterfinal Champions League exit if we meant we got the win over City? And this is an interesting one for me because here's what I'll say. If I have to pick the Champions League or the Premier League this season, I'm picking the Champions League because we've never done it, and I think our club needs it. But if we beat City at the Etihad, we should win the title because every team we play the rest of the season in the Premier League is much worse than we are. We will go into every one of those games being better. What could stop us from winning those games is fatigue, is injuries, is having exerted ourselves too much in the Champions League. So, like, to me, beating City suddenly changes the calculus a little because now you're looking at a Premier League where just beat these other crappy teams. And let's face it, most of the teams in the Premier League are crap. We can beat them, including Spurs, who defensively are dreadful. United, dreadful. So I wonder about that. Like, would you? It's not that I want to get knocked out of the court in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. I want to go as far as we can in both. But if we beat City, does this suddenly for you, Paul, become a situation where we have to think very carefully about prioritizing the league because suddenly it's really in our hands to do it? You know,
I don't think that's how football works. I don't
probably
think that is not the choices that a manager, like, even if you magically could do this, I don't think you do this as a manager. I think there's very few times you say an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup versus the league or Champions League. That's different. But the Premier League versus the Champions League, like, you choose to get the win over City, but go out of the Champions League. Like, you've presented in a way, we're going to beat everybody else. But that's not how football works.
For
you
what
lose
it's worth, that is how it's worked since the new year. So it can still work that way.
Well, yeah, but look, Brentford was close, right? And you would have said, oh, they're rubbish. They're shit right now. Porto, we're going to crush them. We went to penalties. Like, it guarantees you nothing that you beat City. I'm sorry. It doesn't and it guarantees you nothing that we draw with City, right? That does not mean we don't win the Premier League. Everything that happens after that decides whether you win the Premier League. So I think these are the kinds of things our tendency to simplify future outcomes, which are complicated. Like, it's not a thing. And Arteta, if he were presented this choice, I think would say, no, we're just going to go for everything full out. That is not a choice you ever get to make. And if you did have that magical choice, it would guarantee you absolutely nothing.
Yeah. All right. So let's do one last thing sort of on this, in this vein, because I think this is an interesting one, Tim. Like, we talk a lot about rotation, but here's the funny thing, right? Is dropping Kivior and bringing in Zinchenko rotation?
Mm-hmm.
Is dropping Jorginho and bringing in Partey rotation? Is dropping Kai Havertz at 9 and bringing in Jesus rotation? Like, technically,
is it dropping?
Well, dropping's the wrong way. You're rotating out. Is it even rotation if what you're doing is bringing in guys that were once thought of as starters? So Wisdom of Mamir asks, has the Arsenal project moved away from Zinchenko, Jesus, and Partey now? Once they were all considered undroppable, but now I feel they are more like squad players. Is this a sign that the first best Arsenal 11 have outgrown them? And it's such an interesting point, right? Is it we're winning every game because we've moved past those players? Or does correlation not equal causation? And actually, yeah, we're winning every game with those players out, but imagine how great we'd be winning every game with those players in. I have to be honest with you. This is the rare time I don't know. I mean, sometimes I know and I'm wrong, but I usually feel like I know the answer. I really don't know the answer. I suspect we could be very, very good, maybe even better with some of those or all those players back in the lineup, but maybe not. Maybe this is a better approach. So what's your lean on that?
Yeah, I think it also depends on the individual player. So, for example, Gabriel Jesus, no, we have not moved past Gabriel Jesus. It's funny how we went from we must spend £100 million on a striker to actually this one we've got is completely dispensable now. Now, the level of his role, yeah, that's like up for debate. I wouldn't go as far as squad player, but yeah, maybe he's not like the totem pole player anymore. Like Zinchenko, I think certainly isn't. Not at the moment. That doesn't mean he's useless. But it might. He's a player I think we're more likely to move past. I'm not there yet, but I can see it just because he's a very particular type of player. And it's the same as like as City moving past Joao Cancelo. Like he was one of their most important players until they decided they didn't want an inverted fullback anymore. And at that point, he was gone because he wasn't actually very good at being an orthodox fullback. And that could be the same for Zinchenko. I'm not there yet, but that could happen. Jesus, I really, really don't see that. I see what may well happen there is Arsenal just add another forward and consider him part of, the carousel and a strong part. Definitely not squad player. Definitely like the worst he'll go is Trossard level, not Nketiah level, as it were, into that tier of the squad. So I'm with you. Like when you look at Man City, like who have their first choice wingers been the last 4 years? Like it's kind of a rotating cast, isn't it? Was it Bernardo Silva or was it Riyad Mahrez? Who cares? Like no one ever commented on it really. And using some of these players in different positions and everything. So I'm not there yet. I think it could happen to Zinchenko, maybe. Jesus, definitely not. Not least because I don't actually think we're going to go out and get that like 100. We're not going to get like our Declan Rice striker, if that makes sense. Just because I don't think it's on the market. Really, I think we're much more likely to go. Let's get another really good, like, level of forward who can perhaps operate in a couple of roles. And yeah, I'm with you. Like every team obviously has to have one or two players, your Saka, Erdegaard, like you're fit, you play because you're our best players. But other than that, you want to move to a bit more of a kind of a rotation approach.
Yep. Okay, I think we should shift gears a little bit because there's a lot of transfer questions, which of course we need to answer. Interestingly, like not really any Ben White questions, but I think we should at least touch on the fact that he's signed a new contract because I think that is important. So we do want to touch on that. There's a couple other, I think, sort of interesting questions around individual games. And that, by the way, we had the question that I read out about should you focus on the league if we beat City and sort of not focus on the Champions League. We also got the opposite question from Arsen's Handbrake on Twitter. If we lose to City, do you think Arteta should rotate and keep everyone fresh for a tilt at the Champions League? And I actually think that's a more straightforward question than the other one. If we beat City, it doesn't guarantee we're going to win the league, so why not take a shot at the Champions League? But I think if we lose to City, if Arteta said, I'm going to put all my effort into being fit for the CL and have a run at it, I'd have some sympathy for that because I think the odds for the Premier League get so long for us in that scenario. And the Champions League is, I'm not going to say there for us, but, available to us since we're still in it. I don't think we got very lucky with how the fixtures shake out because we have Brighton away before the first leg and Villa at home before the second leg. And while I don't think either of those games are particularly hard in the form that those teams currently are in, neither of them particularly easy enough where, like, if Luton at home was before one of the legs, I do think you'd see some substantial rotation. It's a risk, but you could do it. I don't think you'll see any kind of rotation with the preparation for the Champions League based on how the fixtures have lined up. So we'll just have to see. By the way, where our rivals are concerned, the FA Cup draw will come too late for this pod, but I do think we want Liverpool to draw City. assuming they get past United today, which I'm assuming they will, but maybe they won't. That fixture is going to move the Fulham game for Liverpool, Fulham away, and the Spurs game for City. So they're going to have their own gauntlet to run, and they're alive in all the competitions. So everybody's going to be dealing with the kinds of questions we've just been attempting to answer. So let's pivot. We're going to pivot to some transferish kind of questions and obviously some of the silly questions too. My favorite one we're not going to be able to answer. I will say, someone asked, is there space between the paint and the wall? And I think technically there is some space between the paint and the wall, right? Because the atoms aren't fused together. So it's a question of how much space and what can you do with that space? There's some space. We just found you some additional space in your home. Okay. When you're watching a lot of football in April, I'm going on vacation. I like an idiot. I'm like, I haven't had a vacation since my youngest daughter was born 4 years ago, like a proper vacation. So I'm going to go on one. And picked April. Well, I'm only going to miss 342 games of football in the week that I'm away. But to watch it, I'm going to need NordVPN. So I am telling you, please go get NordVPN. I will be using it. It is phenomenal. All right. I think the thing with NordVPN that I love is they make it easy. You put the app on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. You click, you tell it where you want to be browsing, and you start browsing there. So you can watch the games that aren't available in your area. You can save a lot of money, by the way. You can save way more than you're spending. Do you know that you can sign up for services in foreign countries? And foreign countries have different prices, right? You want to sign up for a streaming service in a country where it's cheaper? You can literally VPN over there and create an account in that country and pay less for the service. That's a life hack I didn't really consider or know about. NordVPN also has threat protection, things like that. A lot of crazy stuff happening with computers getting hacked and passwords and all that. So you can get threat protection from Nord as well. Let's do this. Let's all get Nord. I mean, I already have it. I'm going to be using it on my vacation, as I mentioned, but now is the time to do it. You just go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. You're going to get a discount off the 2 years plus 4 extra bonus months plus gifts and a 30-day risk-free trial. So you can just try it and see what you think. 2 years discount, 4 bonus months for free, gifts, all that. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. This is for the US, UK, Australia, and Canada. If you're in another region, it'll be a different discount available to you. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Okay. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp isn't online therapy, it's therapy. I cannot say it enough. A healthy life is about taking care of your body, and the most important part of your body is inside your skull. It's your brain. So some of us are doing good things for it, and others aren't. Been a lot of attention focused lately on social media and the impact of social media. I think social media is making it harder than ever to navigate our society and to stay mentally healthy. Just having someone who will talk to you, who is a professional, who understands how to work through your issues. My mother's 82 years old. She talks to a therapist. Say 82. Hasn't she got it all figured out? You never have it all figured out. But you know what that's really helpful for? It's helpful for her to be able to work on the things she needs to work on without making it the responsibility of her family, right? Because of course your family's there for you and you can talk to them when you need to and your friends are. But a therapist is there specifically to help you work on the things that you're struggling with. And it doesn't have to be crisis. It can be maintenance. I cannot stress it enough. You don't have to get in a car. You don't have to drive to an office. If that one doesn't work out, drive to a further office. It's more cost effective. It's easier. You can do it in your schedule. Make therapy part of a healthy life. Visit betterhelp.com/vision today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. And finally, you're healthy. You're browsing the internet in a safe way. Now you can focus on what really matters, which is not having hair on your privates. Think of all the hair on your privates right now. It could be gone. It doesn't have to be there.
Now, all the hair on my privates?
I don't want to think about that, but you think about that in your personal space.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, good. Glad we covered that. The point is, everybody thinks this Manscaped stuff is silly, but what everybody realizes is actually I shave my body. Maybe you shave your chest. Maybe you shave your privates. Maybe you shave other areas. You trim other areas. You trim your beard. We do these things, and we do them with terrible tools. We do them with a razor that has literally been in the shower for months, right? I know people are doing this with bad tools, or we do it out of the shower, and then you're like, how do I clean up this hair? So you don't clean it up, and then you walk on it after the shower, and then you have hair on the bottom of your feet. That's gross. It's really gross. I wish I hadn't said it. With Manscaped, you can get the 5th generation lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It has a light. It has a foil blade to go smooth. It has skin-safe blades, right? We know all about that. Long battery life. LED light, as I mentioned, it does induction charging, so you just put it in its little charging cradle and it charges up. I've had mine in the shower for, I swear it's got to be like 3 months since I last charged it. Okay, completely waterproof. Shave in the shower, shave in the bath, in the ocean. Take it into the ocean and become one with nature. You can also get the Beard Hedger Pro kit. So you have a handyman electric face shaver and a beard hedger. Really, really nice tools. Their stuff is just super high quality. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with code ArsenalVision at Manscaped. Nothing like a little spring cleaning in your pants. Paul, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay.
I do want to quibble about something, though. I don't normally argue with you over your ad takes, but the head, the most important part of the body, it's at best my second favorite organ, the brain.
I mean, I would suggest that in your case, in particular, there may be an organ that's doing more heavy lifting. So you're correct about that. I'm kidding. I love you. Okay. So lots and lots of questions on lots and lots of things, but I'm going to give you one, Paul, that's just mind-numbingly painful to consider. From Arsenal Family on Twitter, why would the Arsenal family do this to us? You have to sell one of these players for $100 million this summer. You have to sell one. Who would it be? Odegaard, Saka, Saliba, or Rice?
Jesus Christ.
I'm going to change it. You have to sell one of those players, but it's for $150 million because, like, it doesn't make any sense to sell any of those players for $100 million. But $150 million, you have to sell one of those players. Who would it be and why?
That is a fantastic question because it's almost a tie between those 4 players.
Those are the 4, yeah.
Yeah. I can't believe I'm going to Saka. I can't believe I'm going to say that.
I mean, you boo this man, I think is the expression, but tell me why. I set you up here, to be honest.
Saka or Odegaard?
Oh, God.
Saka.
Just gets worse every time he talks. Yeah, please.
He's brilliant and he's ours. I mean, this isn't based on emotionally. You can't. He's the last player we sell, Saka, as an Arsenal supporter. But if I'm a director of football, a callous bastard, I put on a show of being collegial, social. I barbecue. I'm Latin. I seem like I'm fun, but I'm actually a callous bastard. I sell Saka because I think you can get another world-class winger.
I see. So you're saying positionally, and actually I wouldn't sell Saka. That wouldn't be my answer to this, but I have a lot of sympathy for it because I do think of those positions, the one where you may be able to get someone who can at least get you close to what Saka provides is winger. You know, if
everybody else is a unicorn. Saliba is a unicorn. Rice is a unicorn. Odegaard, I mean, I don't know any player like him. You could find another 10 of equal caliber with 150 million, but he'd be nothing like him. I don't know if he suits the system. I think Guardiola has shown that he can find wingers to play his system. Give him 150 million. He'll find wingers that work for his system. I think you can replace Saka with 150 million.
So I'm gonna give you a different answer, and I take your point that I think positionally, why players who score and assist, like, they're out there.
They are out there.
I mean, I have this weird feeling Saka's going to go to that Salah level and beyond. So I don't know that you can replace that. What I would do is I would sell Declan Rice. Boo this man. Now, let's be clear. I don't want to sell any of these guys. I'm not selling anybody of this group, period. And no amount of money, but I'm forced to by the question. And Tim, my reason for selling Declan Rice is I think Odegaard has become too central to Arteta. He is Arteta on the pitch. I think what he does is just too central to how we play. I don't think Saka's replaceable. I don't think Saliba's replaceable because finding generational central defenders who are 22 and have the rest of their career ahead of them, I just don't think you can do it. Look at Liverpool, right? Van Dijk, when he plays, they're a title contender. When he doesn't play, they're a 5th place team. Declan Rice is sensational. But I think that if you spent that $150 million on another 6/8. I mean, look at what we're doing with Rice now, right? We're plugging him in 6 some days, we're plugging him in the 8 some days. But like, there are players I think you could get to cover ground in that 6 role. And if you spent some money upgrading the left 8, not that Kai's not a good player, but like maybe you got someone a little cleaner fit there and Kai's a 9. Like, you could talk me into a way that we could stay elite replacing Rice. And I don't know that you can talk me into that with any of the other players. So make the terrible choice. And by the way, just before people boo us, I don't want to sell any of these guys. I think they are probably our 4 most important players and 4 of the best players in world football, but I'm being forced to. So how do you see it?
Yeah, I wouldn't do Rice just because we've got an issue in central midfield as well. So I think, like Jorginho might go, Partey's probably going to go, etc., etc. I could be talked into the Saka thing based on Paul's reasoning in terms of like going out and replacing. By the way, I think we have to adjust for inflation for this question. 100 million is not enough for any of these guys.
I changed it to 150, and even that's low. But because
we literally paid 105 for Declan Rice.
Right. That's why I changed it. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I guess if in the interest of variance, I'll go for Saliba because I think there's possibly a world where you can play Ben White there, and Timber becomes our right back, or we buy another right back, or probably have to buy another centre half. Like, don't get me wrong, I agree Saliba's a bit of a unicorn, but we still looked pretty good with Ben White there as well, I think. And I think it's the double injury last season with Tomiyasu that was really, really damaging, as well as losing Saliba himself. I think we'd have coped with that a lot better if Tomiyasu hadn't gone down in the same game. So I guess like I said, interest of variance, I'll say Saliba on the basis. I think we are still pretty strong at the back. We wouldn't be able to go and get another Saliba. I don't think that exists. I think we could go and get another really good defender though.
The problem is,
yeah,
sorry, yeah, I see your point, but the problem I would say with that is like styles make teams, right? And one of the things that we do is we play very, very high up the pitch. We compress the pitch. We press. The center backs are frequently standing in the opposition half. I think the thing with Saliba, maybe you can do this. You have to have that pace that he has, because I think his pace is the safety valve, the security blanket that if he has to get into a running race, odds are he can match someone for pace and we'll be okay. We don't have it in either of our fullbacks. We don't have it in our others. I mean, Gabriel's not slow, but
I think we could do like. Kind of the intention was to do this with Ben White, really. Like, we didn't buy him as a right back. It just so happened that he adapted brilliantly to that position, and Saliba came in when they were injured.
So you don't subscribe to. So wait, Tim, you don't subscribe to the master plan theory that like all along they knew Saliba, when he was fully baked, would come in and be the center back, and White would slide.
Not this good. Not this good. And what this is something actually I meant to add to the answer earlier about rotation and all of that. What good managers are able to do, particularly at this point of the season as well, is roll with the punches. Like, if something's working now, great. Doesn't mean it's forever. Like, I've seen Arsenal teams that win the league. I've seen plenty of teams that win the league that do that. They get to March, April, like Kivior at left back. I don't think Kivior will start our first game next season at left back, but he's working now and we have to win every game now, so you keep him going, kind of thing. Like, I think good managers do that. I don't think this was ever the plan, but when it became apparent that it really worked, yeah, okay, great. Like, do you think Arsene Wenger thought Thierry Henry would be that good as a centre forward? I don't think so. I don't think that means he doesn't deserve credit for it, but I'm sure even he was surprised. Like, I think good managers are just like, okay, this wasn't my plan, but it's working, so now it's my plan.
Yeah. By the way, since we're on the subject of Saliba, then there are some rumors that he's going to be called up for the Olympic team, which is just insane because, I mean, what would he play in the Olympics and also the Euros? And like, it's just a nonsense. Now, here's the interesting thing. It's not a UEFA competition, which means Arsenal can block him from going, can deny him the right to go. I think you can get into a situation with a player where you deny them the right to go play for their country and they're actually quite upset about it. But given that he is a full France international now, and I don't think, I think, Tim, you've mentioned that for Brazilians, it matters. Like there are certain nations where I think this matters more and where it matters less. And I'm just going to guess, and I could be wrong, so French listeners correct me. I don't think playing in the Olympics, especially in a Euros summer, is going to mean that much to a French player. So, Paul, I mean, I think Arsenal should block him from going, and I don't think it'll be an issue. But do you think there's an issue there?
Well, if we think back to when, if you accept this, and I think a lot of people do, that him and Arteta fell out, or him, Arteta, and Arsenal fell out for a while, it was because they blocked him playing in a cup game that he really wanted to, and there was a big back and forth about did he, didn't they?
Oh, that's right. There was it a French?
Basically, their FA Cup, I think.
Yeah.
So I'd be very careful about that. But I think the most rational thing is that he'll conclude he's a full French international and he needs to prioritize and blah, blah, blah.
He called up to the Euro squad anyway, right? Like, am I crazy? Yeah. Like, so does he want to go to the Olympics and the Euros?
Hopefully not. But can I come in 2-footed on Tim's answer on Saliba?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should. Not just can you, but you should. Yeah, please.
So sorry about this, Tim. But like, if you try to replace Saliba, you're worse, right? Because he's such a unicorn. That's the problem. Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. White was the original plan, but Saliba's better. He just is. And if you gave me 100+ million to go and find a centre back, that's the problem with centre backs. Van Dijk's a one-off. Saliba's a one-off. Other players who looked like they were going to be that level. I mean, with 150 million buys you a lot of centre back. I mean, that's value when you go into the market. I still think it's almost impossible to recreate the level we have with Saliba. And weirdly, it's almost the standout player in all of those because it's so hard to get a centre back who does what he does.
Well, and I'll let you come back on this, Tim. But one thing, just super quick. Who was the one player we lost in the run-in last season? Saliba. And we didn't just get worse. We fucking sucked for the run-in last. Like, our defense literally became like a bottom third in the Premier League defense. So
when you look at all the stuff we ask of, how high we play, all that kind of stuff. Sorry, Tim.
Anyway, yeah, Tim.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, but that's because Rob Holding came in, right? We didn't have Timber, Tomiyasu was injured, Kivior ended up coming in the end at right centre-back, and we did kind of look better. And then we kind of started experimenting with some things and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, look, yeah, I think that's fair enough. But then I'd say, like, look at Man City. Who is Man City's Saliba, Van Dijk? I don't know. Like, is it Ruben Diaz? He hasn't even played the last two or three games, kind of come out the team. City definitely have much more of a high level rotational options. Like, I don't think they have like that, that unicorn centre half. I think they have
it's really interesting, though.
Really good ones.
Yeah, Liverpool require a unicorn centre half. I think we do at the moment. I don't think we're where City are in terms of that amorphous. Like, we're just not quite. We might be as good as them, but we're not as evolved in the Pep system.
We're missing something here, though.
We might be better.
We have a much better defense than City. Like, I agree with you, Tim. They don't have that unicorn defender. And I think for the first time in a while, they actually look a little gettable at the back. Like, Liverpool created a shit ton of chances against them. I saw Manchester United have players running in unmarked 3 different times and they blew it. Like, I'm not trying to say their defense is bad, but we have a better defense than them. And some of that maybe is because we have a unicorn center back. You know what I mean, Tim?
It's a more structured defense. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
as a whole, it's another thing.
But I'd also like to play into your answer. Like, I think Declan Rice is a massive, massive part of that as well. Like,
probably, yeah.
Because Saliba played in some games, right? He played in that Bournemouth game. He played in the Aston Villa game. He played in games where we looked open. And I guess it also depends on what we do. Like, if we do the Zinchenko inverting thing and practically just don't have a defender there, then yeah, you really need some unicorns because they've got to cover a lot of space. What we're doing at the moment, maybe with Kivior, like just being an orthodox left back, maybe we're more solid like that. We'd definitely have to do that all the time. Like Saliba coming out would end Zinchenko, like no two ways about it. But I do think that a lot of our improvement has been about Declan Rice as well, being absolute monster off the ball, which is personally why I wouldn't have chosen him. But
yeah.
Well, and by the way, which to your point, look at City. You take out one of City's center backs, they're okay. You take out Haaland, they still win. You take out De Bruyne, they still win. You take out Rodri, they can't win. They don't win a game when Rodri doesn't play. So I've probably got it completely wrong as usual. So let me ask you this then, Tim, because this is a question that rolls right into it. And this comes from Sats Domino on Twitter. If you were forced to invest big money in a third midfielder this summer, which I actually think we probably will do, would it be an 8 making Declan primarily a 6, or a 6 making Declan primarily an 8?
I would. That's going to depend on what happens with Jorginho. If Jorginho goes or doesn't commit, then we have to commit something to that position, I think, because it's up for Partey one way or another, whether we get rid of him or not. Like, he just can't play the games we need him to play. So, sorry, boring answer. If Jorginho goes, it has to be a 6. I think if he stays, but then again, how much longer is he going to stay for, really? So
yeah, you got to plan for succession there, because you can't go into another season of Jorginho playing 40 games or whatever.
And also, like, we again psychologically we seem to have moved into this space where like Havertz is the number 9 now, and I don't think it's that simple. Ideal world, we'll get another player who can do both, basically to some degree. But I'm probably leaning more towards a 6, to be honest, because I don't think Jorginho is going to be around much longer anyway. And personally, I'm happy with Rice doing both. I'm not bothered about him, definitely cementing one of those positions in perpetuity. Interesting. He's good at both of them.
Yeah, he is. So I would say, as the question is written, because I'm going to answer the question as written, which is what I always do. I would invest in an 8, making Rice primarily a 6. And my argument there is simply Rice can be our Rodri. Rice can be generational as a 6. He could be one of the great 6s in the history of the league. At 8, he can be very, very good. I don't know at 8 that you are extracting as much superpower from him as you can at 6. Now, that's not to say you couldn't get a good 6, play Rice at 8, have a just extraordinarily physical and athletically dominant midfield, and still win everything. We're doing that essentially now. But for me, I would invest in Rice becoming the greatest 6 of all time, and do that by buying an 8 where, by the way, I don't know that we have a left 8 in the squad currently that I feel is at the absolute top level that we can go.
It's Smith Rowe and Vieira, probably more Vieira dependent as well. Like, is that a guy that we're definitely investing in, or is he going to go?
Great point. Paul, you wanted to get in on this.
I just think it might be interesting. The thing about Declan Rice is you don't always want him at the 6, even if you like him as a 6. You want him where the action is, where he can impact it. And different games are different. We've seen him even when we had Jorginho and Rice, where they kind of toggled, where one of them, actually it was Jorginho who pushed up because he could sit in that pocket and ping the ball about. And Rice covered from deeper. He was a screen, but he just moves to the action. So you kind of want a complementary player. Oh, you want another midfielder who's got both in him, a bit of a 6 and maybe a bit more of an 8 to balance out Rice's a bit of a 6 and a bit less of an 8. And that way you can always play those two together, and Rice can sit in either of those pockets where he can be most busy and most effective. I almost think you want a kind of a slightly yin-yang complementary. He's an 8, but he can do some 6. So that would be my answer.
And I like it as an answer. Just to be
clear.
I
would sign Jorginho. I think it's a no-brainer to sign up Jorginho for one more year.
Yeah, if we can keep him around, great. But I do think you at least have to have in the back of your mind, at the age that he is and where he is in his career, you have to at least know maybe he doesn't have another season at this level. And you have to plan around that. I think you have to be careful about that because we are playing at such a high level. Remember, we're not Arsenal trying to be 4th. We're Arsenal trying to win trebles now. That is who we are. That's where we're at. So you have to really think about all eventualities. Tim, we don't have a specific question about it, but I think it'd be crazy to do the pod and not talk about it. Really, really exciting news that Ben White has signed a new deal. I think the club deserves a lot of credit for how we built this project. I mean, this is unlike anything. It's like what Liverpool did, but almost better, because Liverpool had that Coutinho sale to fund a lot of stuff, and they sort of hit some lotteries with like Salah. We've just gone about it in such a methodical way, the way we built this thing and built it quickly and turned ourselves into one of the best clubs in the world and best teams in the world. And obviously Mikel Arteta deserves an unbelievable amount of credit, but we deserve huge credit for re-signing players in a methodical way and just getting these players inked so it doesn't become a big deal. Ben White is obviously adored by his team, adored by Mikel Arteta, a player that, he said is the one in the squad that will try to play injured. And so you have to get the doctor to tell you how he's doing, because he won't tell you. He'll hide it and try to play. If I could go back and change anything in human history, I think the one thing in human history I would change is Ben White saying he doesn't watch football. All right, there may be other things I'd change, but Ben White saying he doesn't watch football, because I think that comment has so changed the perception of this player and so dramatically, I think, mischaracterized who he is. Regarded as one of the hardest workers, if not the hardest worker in training, plays through injury, played for Leeds in the championship, played every single minute of a championship season. Not easy to do. There's just no way you can question his professionalism and his commitment to his craft. And I just think a throwaway comment has been so misunderstood. And by the way, I'd be willing to bet a lot of players don't go home and watch games.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet that's not what they want to do at the end of their day. So how happy are you that we've re-signed Ben White, and just thoughts on the player, his future, and maybe how he's regarded?
Yeah, absolutely. He's what I was thinking about this actually the other day, about how kind of good we've been with right backs. Lee Dixon, Lauren, Bakary Sagna, Hector Bellerin was someone we loved. Maybe not always just for footballing reasons, and now Ben White's like come around, and it's just such a. Apologies if you can hear my daughter in the background laughing like a maniac.
It's adorable, and I love it.
Like music.
She's laughing like that, and United haven't even kicked off yet.
Yeah, I know. Imagine what I'm going to sound like in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. But he's, the fact that he's just become a world-class right back, just like that, it's just great, isn't it? Like, because Saliba's emergence could have ended him. That could have been like, we pay 50 million for this guy, but sorry, not working for you, because this guy's even better than we thought it was. But no, it's just shuffled across to right back. And what I love players who add things to their game. That's what I love in a player, when I can identify that was maybe something you weren't brilliant at, but now you are, because that is someone who goes and studies their game and everything. And Ben White, when he first came in at right back, really good, really solid, but he didn't have that overlap, did he? Now he has. And that doesn't just happen by accident. That doesn't happen by osmosis. He changed like his physique, essentially, so he could do that up and down overlapping thing. And I just really loved that comment I think Lewis Ambrose made on a recent Arscast, where he talked about like you get three types of right back in elite football, and Ben White is all of them. Basically, like the third centre back, the invert into midfield, and the overlapper, and he can do all of them, and he can do all of them for every minute of every game. And I don't think that's what we wanted for him this season. I think there was an acknowledgement that perhaps we had to overburden him last year, and we brought Timber in, and then Timber went down, forgive the awful pun there, and we've had to do it to him again, and he's still doing it. And yeah, and I also think like he's something really interesting he said as well was about actually it's his dad who doesn't like football, and he said that actually that's been really good because it's created no external pressure on him, because his dad, he's like, my dad comes and watches my games, he doesn't have a clue what he's watching, so he's not like, he wasn't the dad on the sideline like going, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. His dad's just like, I haven't got a clue, I don't watch football, so that's like taken a pressure off him. I do think the other thing that is going to be important, so I don't feel the same as you on the Southgate thing and the England thing. I don't think a lot of Premier League fans care. I don't think it's going to resonate whatsoever inside football stadiums or anything like that. I think once the international break's gone, no one cares during the international break, let alone when it's gone. But I think what it could do is forge a tighter bond between Arsenal and Ben White. Actually, and I think you could see that. I think the timing of the announcement was completely deliberate because they knew the England squad was coming out. I think Arsenal knew that, and I feel like it's brought maybe him and the fans and the club closer together, because it feels like we're so used to him being there that sometimes you miss those players when they're always there. Same with Gabriel. But now it's created this, Southgate said this, has he? And like it's almost like we're bringing him closer to our bosom, as it were. And
that's very interesting, Tim, because that video they did with the players talking about Ben White, that's quite unusual. And it really it really shows that
like
connection.
They felt like they needed to say it, basically.
Yeah.
Like it felt
Wasn't
like
it
it
weird?
needed to be stated.
Yeah, wasn't it weird? It just stuck out to me that Southgate said that Edu had called, Ben White had asked Edu to call him. I mean, there's so many dimensions to that. How often do you hear that the player asks the director of football of his own club? I mean, talking about putting yourself in the Arsenal camp, not the England camp. He has the Arsenal director of football phone Southgate to say that he would not be interested. I mean, talking about the gulf between him and that setup, I think it's fascinating. I haven't unwrapped it, but I'm like, wow, there is a gulf there.
Edu used to get those phone calls. That used to be his job, to take those phone calls. For example, when Jorginho decided to declare for Italy, Edu took that phone call some years ago. But I was just going to conclude with who doesn't want Ben White closer to their bosom?
I do.
Good one.
Yeah, Paul, did you have more to add there?
I do. So when you look at, I think it's great that Ben White said he doesn't watch football. And I think it's great that I don't love the fact that he fell out with the England squad and stuff, but I think there's a great education in it that football man Steve Holland couldn't get his head around the fact that Ben White just has a different vibe to him. And Steve Holland wasn't flexible enough in his understanding of people in football to realize that he was just misinterpreting what he was seeing. And Arsenal totally gets Ben White. They watched him, they studied him, they knew what they were getting, they overpaid for him, and thereby had the chance to show that they could underpay for him because they knew what they were going to do with this guy over time. Ben White, in his discussion of him and his club and his love for playing for the club, uses the word work something like 7 times in about 2 paragraphs. But so you jump at that and you say, oh, he looks on it as work. But you can see he loves the work. He just, he loves this. He's serious. He's professional. He talks about it being his work as his chance to improve himself. There's an education. Not everybody needs to see it this way. Not everybody needs to be this way. But I love the idea that he hasn't kowtowed and tugged his forelock and joined this procession of young men like they're been sold off to World War I to get themselves shot up on the front lines. Only it's I've got to do everything to bow down to my national career in the national team. He would have been a serious player in their squad. It's their loss, but there's an education in there for people to see that it isn't this monotone procession to national football, that there's complexity to people. Most people won't bother, but those who look into what he's saying can learn something about themselves, about Ben White, about football, about seriousness, that it's not this mindless, football's everything. For Ben White, football isn't everything, but playing for Arsenal is something he loves. And you can see it in his game. He loves every game. He loves every duel. He loves every battle. The word warrior is used about him. This is not a man who lacks passion for playing for Arsenal. He just has a different mindset about it, and it's a more honest one.
Yeah, can I say as well, just to add to that, because first of all, you're right. I think around national teams, there's a kind of we're doing you the favour type vibe. But look, I'm reading a great book at the moment called, I can't remember the exact name, but it's John Ronson about the definition of a psychopath. And it's called What's a Psychopath, right? So people who've read this book will know what this is about. But
good luck, Tim. Good luck with this pivot.
Well. So let me tell you, Mikel Arteta, Marcelo Bielsa, Football-wise, psychopaths, the pair of them. Total football psychopaths. If Ben White is loved and adored by Mikel Arteta and Marcelo Bielsa, then I'm sorry, Steve Holland and Gareth Southgate are the ones who have to think, why will this guy not play for me when he is loved by those guys? That's what they've got to think.
Yep. You're on mute.
Woo! Professionalism. My name is Elliot.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Not Gip. I was about to say I don't want to say anything on this, and I effectively did. I want to be careful. On the Patreon pod we did on Friday, I expressed myself as emphatically, emotionally, and articulately as I am capable of doing on this topic. I will simply add that I find Gareth Southgate's behavior utterly disgraceful. And I will back that to the hilt. I simply feel, first of all, it is widely reported that Southgate had this answer prepared and that he was waiting for that question. That question was teed up about Ben White. You have one responsibility when you manage a club in any sport, and that is to keep things that go on behind the scenes, if possible. It is a small community of elite professionals, and the players will look at what Southgate did to Ben White, and they will know that it was self-serving. They will know that he protected his mate, Steve Holland. The issue isn't whether Ben White wants to play for England. The issue is whether it was necessary to say Ben White doesn't want to play for England and woe is me. I love him. I like him. I would have brought him. There's no issue with my people. It's him. He doesn't want to play for me. It's sad because he's really good. I'd pick him too. I swear I would, but he doesn't want to play for me. Okay. Setting aside that all that is bullshit to some extent, and not bullshit to other extent, setting aside who's to blame, there is simply no need to make that statement. There isn't. You can say, I picked the best team that I think is available to me based on all factors. That team's going to go far in the tournament, and I'm really excited to see what we can achieve together. I won't be talking about selection any further at this time. You can say that. But he teed up a question specifically to hang Ben White out to dry and put this on him. He didn't have to do it. And by the way, if you're saying, who cares? What does it matter? What matters now is that I do think it's going to have repercussions. I slightly disagree with Tim. Henry Winter, by the way, in a stunning piece of Access journalism. The FA wanted their hit piece on Ben White. They got it. What's the headline of the article from Henry Winter? Ben White will always be known for refusing to play for England. Ben White, a 25-year-old young man, will always be known for refusing to play to England. A Daily Mail reporter went further to say that it was a disrespect to his grandfather who served in the war and barely had the use of his legs, and Ben White has the use of his legs and should be using his legs to run around and play for England. I'm not kidding. That actually happened. I just think that you have a responsibility as a manager to some extent, protect the integrity of the dressing room and the dynamic of the team and to not hang your players out to dry. And he didn't do that. He instead opted to protect his mate, Steve Holland, going so far as to say, I've heard rumors that it's related to Steve Holland, and that's a nonsense, which, by the way, is literally a bold-faced lie. I'll tell you this much. The players know what's up. Bukayo Saka knows what's up. Declan Rice knows what's up. He's relying on those players. And I just think that as a manager, when you choose to hang a young man out to dry in front of the global media like that and stick that label on him so that Henry Winter can then go write an FA hit piece that he'll always be remembered for refusing to play for England, that's what you did to this young man, Gareth. You didn't have to. You didn't have to do it. He said, I'm the one who suffers when a player doesn't want to play for me. No, this is the young man who's going to suffer. And all you had to say is nothing. I picked my team. I can't talk about selection any further. There are a lot of factors that go into it. Could have said that, chose to hang the young man out to dry. Now he's coming in for hit pieces, and I have no respect for it. If you are an England supporter and you feel I am dead wrong, you're right. I don't have skin in the game. It's not necessarily my place to say I should stay in my lane, but it is related to Arsenal and a player I love and care about. And I think the people that really love and care about Ben White will let him know that. And hopefully he will be wrapped in the flag of Arsenal, if not wrapped in the flag of England. So that's my comment on it. I think we should leave it there for the day. You can hear more, and you can hear Clive's thoughts on it, which were very impassioned and very articulate as ever. If you want to check that out, we'll have a lot more this week. We'll have scouting videos for all the striker stuff that we're linked with, and we will do a lot to get through it. We will preview the Manchester City game what we're going to do is we're going to rewatch, I think, Bayer Leverkusen versus Bayern Munich as a way to get ready for the Bayern Munich tie. So we're going to do a lot of fun stuff with that. But until that time, Paul's on Twitter at Pause My Pants. Thank you, Pause.
Woohoo!
Tim's on Twitter at Stillmanator. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always. My daughter's not on Twitter, but if you did enjoy her ramblings, thanks on behalf of her as well.
Yep, she's got a future in this game. She was as articulate as I am. So there you go. My name's Elliot Smith. Block me on Twitter. Gunner. We love you. And we will talk to you in several weeks after Arsenal 10, City 0.